Welcome to Strategy Simplified. In today's program, which I'm really excited for, Beth chats with Tara Russell, co-founder and chief strategy officer at Photon Marine. Tara was a client for our Strategy Sprint program. If you're asking, what the heck is a Strategy Sprint? Well, it's a one-week virtual consulting project where a team of consultants comes together to solve a real-world problem for a real-world client. You can head to the links in the show notes to learn more about what it's like to be a part of Strategy Sprint, either as a consultant or as a client with a business problem to solve. In this episode, Tara shares about the problem she asked the Strategy Sprint team to solve, what it was like to work with the team, and the impact of the findings and recommendations. In addition, after the discussion, we'll answer a listener question about communicating using the pyramid principle. You'll want to stick around for that. We hope you enjoy the show.
Our guest today is Tara Russell, co-founder and chief strategy officer of Photon Marine. Photon Marine is a company that is developing high-powered electric outboard motors for tourism, transportation, and municipal boat fleets. Tara and her business partner, Marcelino Alvarez, participated in our last Strategy Sprint project in January. Strategy Sprint is a hands-on consulting project where you get to work with a real client on one of their active business problems. Tara volunteered to have an MBB-led student consulting team work on a week-long project for them. She'll tell us more about the problem she asked the team to solve in a few minutes. So Tara, thank you for being with us today. I'm excited to welcome you to the podcast and interested to learn more about your experience with Strategy Sprint.
Thanks, Beth. It's really a treat to be with you. I appreciate your having us on.
Great. So to start, we'd like to give you an opportunity to share a quick overview of your background and tell us a little bit about your company, Photon Marine. Then we'll dive into your experience with Strategy Sprint.
Sounds great. Yeah. So my background is interesting. I started as a mechanical engineer. I studied at Georgia Tech, and I really built my career. I talk about my first career in the consumer products world, and my second career really as an entrepreneur, having built a variety of different social enterprise organizations, for-profit, nonprofit. And so I first worked with General Motors, with Intel, and with Nike, and then have spent the last 15 to 20 years building a variety of different startup companies, everything from travel, most recently for Carnival Corporation, building a cruise line with them, but also being in the business process outsourcing space, food production, B2B food production, also having done a variety of different financial independence and job training organizations overseas in Southeast Asia. We've launched Photon Marine just over the course of this last year. I'm so honored and fortunate to be partnered with a great team of co-founders. There are 4 of us. So you've met my partner, Marcelino Alvarez. We also have 2 others, our Chief Technology Officer, Nick, and Charles Steinbeck, who's our head of business development. It's been an amazing thing just to work with such a seasoned and well-rounded founding team. And it's been a real treat. We based the company out of Portland, Oregon. So we've got a lot of access to water and a lot of access to just kind of the broader marine space. And we're really targeting a commercial B2B fleet operators with this high-powered electric outboard motor technology. In addition, we're really working to spearhead the ecosystem and bring fleet management intelligence to the kind of broader arena. And so if you notice kind of the space now, the context is still fairly early. There are other players. There is competition in the space. However, there's really not anyone going after this kind of higher-powered, long-range outboard motor space. And there's not really much competition going after this kind of commercial B2B fleet targeted customer.
That's incredible. Yeah. Very exciting. It's very exciting.
Yeah, we're super excited. And it's a really energizing time. And honestly, just the timing with which we were able to engage and work with you all at Management Consulted couldn't have been better. And I look forward to kind of sharing a little bit more about that through this conversation.
I love that. So you were a client for our January 2022 Strategy Sprint. What was the problem that you asked the team to solve?
Yeah, we came in pretty focused because we're in the process of raising capital. We're early, we're pre-seed stage, and we're building our prototype. And we've really been working to close our lead climate venture capitalist partner. And so we felt like it was really critical for us to kind of drill in and zero down on a lot of our numbers. And so we have our go-to-market strategy and had already kind of built that. But what we really asked your team to do was kind of gut check our go-to-market strategy and to really work in tandem with us to like size even more granular level, that kind of total addressable market and really like our kind of strategic slice of that market. And so it couldn't have been more effective. We were really, really pleased with the work the team did.
Yeah, that is a fascinating question to research. So I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to help you out with that. So how involved were you in the project?
So I was really involved with the project, and I was really fortunate to be involved with the project. I felt, it was a tremendous honor just to work with this team and get to know such a diverse group of people. I was honestly, personally, really impressed with the diversity and breadth and depth of experience that all of the participants on our team kind of brought to the table. We had everything from people getting different degrees, having already had worked and been in a variety of different industries. There was one guy that had been in the oil industry for 10 years, had his MBA, but was really kind of contemplating a career shift. There was another young man at USC who was just like total eager beaver and like brought a whole different perspective to the table. And, I was amazed by the diversity of different industries that the representatives on the team kind of brought to the table. I thought that was really helpful and unique in terms of just how people were looking at the problem. So we had everything from medical industry to oil and gas to a variety of different sort of services industries. And I think that really enhanced us getting to the right numbers throughout the course of the week. So it was really, it was a joy to work with them.
Yeah, we really have an impressive mix of people on our teams. So it really does help to hear different perspectives from different areas. That's amazing. So what was it like to interact with the team during the week? How did that work?
Yeah, it's interesting because before the project, I didn't have a whole lot of imagination or expectation about how much could really be done in just the course of a week. So we sort of had, I would call it like 3 primary touch points throughout the week, maybe even 4 actually. And I felt really grateful that we made the space to kind of do the midweek check-ins because I felt like it allowed us to get even deeper into the market numbers that we were really hunting. And from a strategy perspective, it really allowed us to kind of hone in and kind of double down on what we're doing in terms of our phase 1 customers and phase 1 sales. And so it was enormously helpful. We had sort of an early kickoff with the team and again, got to meet everyone from Stephanie and Nare and kind of the broader team and just like hear about their backgrounds and experience and really work with them in terms of bringing the context of our kind of marine electrification sort of industry space to their mindset and really just kind of helping paint that picture of the world of boating, everything from the recreational to the commercial space, and then helping them sort of understand the kind of different segments of that market. And I thought the kickoff was enormously productive and also just like really fun and informative and insightful. And then, almost immediately the team dove in, got to work, and I couldn't believe how quickly they were ready to sort of do a gut check on some things. I think it was literally maybe a day or 2 later, we had sort of a midweek kind of check-in and questions. We might have even done that twice. And the amount of information this group of young people brought to the table in just, 24, 48 hours was really kind of mind-boggling, I thought, for people that didn't have the kind of background and familiarity of travel and tourism that some on our team have or hadn't been spending months, digging through R&D around this kind of space. It was really exciting to see how aggressively and honestly, how much curiosity they brought to the project. And so I would highly encourage anyone else that's thinking about doing a project to make space during your week, even if it's really hard. I think we did one like kind of later at night, but like make space to check in with your team leader at least, because you're able to kind of direct the ship a little bit better towards some of the core and key questions that your business is trying to solve for. So for instance, for us, one of the things we were really looking at from a strategy perspective was the kind of broader US market and sort of Central Latin America, Caribbean, compared to sort of the European market. And we've really been trying to discern in terms of like phase one sales. Do we go harder at just kind of US and sort of Florida, Caribbean, Central America, or do we kind of straddle and try to be in two places, or do we just go, to Europe or whatever? And I think we felt pretty confident that the US kind of like West Coast, as well as like Florida, South, sort of Caribbean, Central America area makes a lot of sense. But it was amazing to have the team come back with such detailed information and numbers to really affirm for us that we could not just like tentatively step into that space, but that we could run hard. And so, since then, it'll be fun to share some of the progress. But I mean, we just like started running hard out of the gates as we wrapped up the project with the management consultant team, because it really validated for us what we sort of had as a hypothesis. And it gave us that much more ammunition as it relates to really aggressively, not just presenting to investors, but having sort of these really meaningful dialogues with customers. So again, I'm happy to give some updates to that if it's helpful as well.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about the findings and recommendations. So at the end of the week, the team presented a final presentation to you. What was the biggest takeaway for your team from that presentation?
I think it was amazing, like I said, just validation of some of our directional strategy. And it really crystallized that, yes, 100% marine tourism is the right focus for us. So the lion's share of our focus is on this kind of broader marine tourism and transportation fleet. So you can think about that as like everything from water taxis, along sort of coastal municipal areas, to really like cruise line related kind of surrounding industries. So things like whale watching, scuba diving, snorkel boat trips, wildlife viewing boat trips. We've got some really interesting customers and pilots coming together that are in those spaces. And so, whether it's transporting employees in a cruise related kind of business, or whether it's transporting guests for more of a kind of an excursion type experience, those hyper repeatable trips in terms of like their distance and the sort of power required are exactly what we're looking for. And so I think what was great is we had much more granular level numbers around the travel and transportation kind of space. Additionally, we really got this kind of interesting and key insight that the US market between now and 2026 in our kind of realm in terms of this broader electric outboard motors space, the US market is growing at 2.5 times the pace of the European market. And we did not understand that nuance until we had this project with the team. And so it was enormously valuable and insightful to like allow us to bet all of our chips hard right now into this kind of what we call the broader West Coast US. So everything from Alaska, Washington, Oregon, California, and kind of down through the coast. In addition, we're really heavily focused on Florida, Caribbean, and then I would call it like Central and Latin America. So kind of all the water stuff that would happen off like a Miami-based Caribbean cruise, right? So anywhere that a ship might go in terms of a week or a 2-week vacation, as far south as like Belize or something down in kind of Central America, and really all throughout the Caribbean. So the Bahamas are a massive market opportunity area, but as you know, the Caribbean's an enormous sort of opportunity zone for us because there is so much water-based tourism experiences. Oh yeah, that's huge. That's a lot of territory to cover. That's amazing. Honestly, it was so amazing because, and I don't even know if I've told you this yet, but we met with the team on Friday in terms of our final presentation. And I feel like we did that final readout with the team about midday. Literally the next meeting we went into after our readout in terms of the final presentation from management consulted was with a climate venture capitalist investor group called Urban Us, who just happened to be to lead our round. They kind of closed the deal with us later that month. We literally finalized the deal with them over this last couple of weeks. And so I have chills even telling the story, because I personally remember talking specifically to Sean, the partner at Urban Us, about some of what we learned with the team in terms of those granular numbers, about the true kind of size of the 2026 space, what it looked like at, electric outboards versus inboards, the detailed numbers between, commercial and recreational. And I had so much confidence to share that kind of detail and that data with boldness. And it has really energized our whole team. I mean, from when we finished with you guys January 14 to now, just 6 weeks later, we've closed our lead climate venture capitalist who's leading our investment round. We're 4 weeks from getting our prototype in the water. So our prototype is almost finished. We just came off the Miami International Boating Show, and we had sort of an enormous amount of leads from customers. We've kind of wireframed our 2 initial customer pilots. So we got those sort of in development, and we have a variety of investor conversations, probably 10 to 15 investor meetings a week now. We just kind of can't even keep up. So literally, I feel like I went from swimming, a kind of normal cadence with work to just racing now.
Full speed ahead.
We are running hard, full speed ahead. Wow. And honestly, just the momentum we feel as a team, I have enormous gratitude for all of you in terms of your willingness to work with us in that time frame, because it's almost like hindsight is 2020. It really was mission critical timing, and we're trying to really hit this window because the electric vehicle sort of world, and honestly, the infrastructure development, both on land and water, is coming along so aggressively that we really needed to be able to be running hard now. And I'm not sure, right? What would have happened with that lead climate venture capitalist partner that we were working with. That we couldn't have found a better partner. They're very pro hardware. Yeah.
Amazing. It's so wild to hear that you were able to implement the team's recommendations within hours, within days,
within 30 minutes.
Yeah. I love that. That's pretty wild.
We'll be right back after this quick message. There's only one true way to build consulting skills, and that's to work on a consulting project. Are you ready to add killer experience to your resume and prepare for life on the job? Then you'll want to join the next strategy sprint, happening May 23rd through the 27th, 2022. Strategy Sprint is a 1-week virtual consulting project where you, in a team of 6 led by an MBB consultant, solve a strategic problem for a real-world business. Apply today. If you're accepted, you'll get an early bird discount of $95. But the discount ends on Friday, April 1st. Click the link in this episode's show notes to complete the 2-minute application today. There are only 24 spots available, so don't miss out.
Can you estimate the financial impact of the project for your company?
It's interesting. I was thinking about that today, and it's difficult to quantify how impactful this, project has been for us, because I feel like we're so early in terms of our kind of broader roadmap as we kind of bring this baby to life, so to speak. And yet there's no question that the project helped us land that initial kind of climate investor. So to give you a sense, Urban Us invested $250,000 with us. So I would say it was at least that, helpful to sort of close that lead investor. But the truth is, as you know, with every sort of company that's rapid growth stage, we're now having such an accelerated pace of conversations with investors. And a big part of that is because we were able to secure Urban Us as our lead. And it sort of it kind of drives the flywheel and the momentum faster, further. And it really is getting us into different circles of conversation. To give you a sense, one of the things I've been working on today is prioritizing our sort of next investor meetings and conversations, and just doing some due diligence and really working to know and understand how well some investment funds might overlap to our mission and vision or not, right? I think it's much like whether you're in the for-profit world or the nonprofit world, like it's mission critical to really understand your kind of target and your audience. And I think so often people tend to take like a machine gun approach. They just kind of like shoot bullets out in the wind and just kind of hope something lands. And in my personal experience, that's like a terrible mistake because it's a waste of your time and it's a waste of their time. And it's not as professional as you could be if you kind of do your homework, right? And so I feel like what we're trying to do is really ensure we've done our kind of background legwork, that we understand and know what the kind of like investment hypothesis or thesis is with a fund, and make sure that their kind of portfolio and investment approach are aligned with what we're trying to do, either on the hardware side or the software side. And the space we're playing in is mobility, it's transportation, it's a very capital intensive space. And some investors are not, they're allergic to hardware, put it that way. And other investors are like the one we've secured as our primary lead partner. Other investors are really kind of organized in a way to support hardware focused technologies. And so, one of the benefits that we already feel with this lead investor is they have become a partner and almost like a player on our team. And so weekly, we are working with them to understand within their portfolio of companies, as well as within their kind of broader kind of holding structure of various companies, what are all the resources that they have that can support our journey, how they can help us most effectively with supply chain parts, how they can help us down the line with the right debt capital, how they can help us sort of secure the kind of like-minded startups who are maybe like a season ahead of us, who've potentially gone over some hurdles that we're going to have to cross ourselves. And so it's kind of like, it feels impossible to me right now to quantify the value that the team has really helped us secure, because it sort of has so many different layers. And it also feels like an octopus, right? It's like, I feel like the longer we're in kind of, for lack of a better word, the sort of longer we're in bed with this group that we've just kicked off with in terms of our climate partner, the more we get to know them and their sort of holding structure, the more value there is to uncover. And I just, I feel like we're so new to that. We're only about a week into working with Urbanus, like formally. It's been a couple of weeks, I guess. But even just in this last couple of weeks, the sort of like wealth of resource that we have. And I have teenage children, and, they're trying to get their head around like me raising capital and like this whole process of entrepreneurship. And they've kind of been alongside me the whole time in various different startups. And they're both very kind of like entrepreneurial, environmentally focused kids, and both very strong leaders. And I found myself at dinner the other night telling them like, so basically, we identified the right partner, Urbanus, and they've essentially invested to lead our pre-seed round. And I said, in other words, they are paying us to be a part of our team. I couldn't really figure out a simple way to tell a 14 and 16-year-old who are trying to get their head around what does it mean from like an equity and dilution and blah, blah. But it was sort of like, I wanted them to understand this is more than the money. It's not just a financial investment. It's really a vote of confidence. It's an additional set of resources to kind of come alongside our team. And it's like a wealth of like, just rich resource data that we can sort of kind of dip into over this coming like 3, 6, 12 months because we're very rapidly moving from pre-seed to seed stage. And so our prototype will be in the water this next month, and we're right behind closing this note. We're sort of raising our seed round. And so, for a hardware focused business, raising capital is going to be a high amount of our energy for the next 3 to 5 years. And I think that, there's no question you guys really helped kind of launch the plane, so to speak, as we've kicked off. So thank you so much.
That's so great. That's great. What would you tell a company considering entering a project for consideration in Strategy Sprint?
In my personal opinion, I don't know why someone wouldn't. It's a wealth of knowledge, experience, resource. And in some ways you get into, or you get out of it as much as you put into it. And so, as a sort of bootstrapping startup, whatever stage of the company, a sort of growth oriented entity might be, in my personal opinion, there's no question there could be enormous amount of value. I mean, if we had the chance to go do it again, we would dive back into it in a heartbeat, because I think as long as you spend time really thinking about the area of focus you want to dive into, and as long as you can, like, with clarity, effectively describe the problem you're trying to solve for, or the data you're really trying to hunt and mine, I think the better you can kind of focus the team and give them the context, the education, the background, like in a quick way. If you can sort of teach them up, so to speak, on your industry, and then also equip them with some tools, resources, they will, be off to the races. There's no question. And I think, like, what's really fun is the diversity of professional backgrounds and experiences that your consultants bring to the table just allows for all kinds of, like, it's kind of where the art meets science, because how each of the team members chooses to dig into stuff is more artistic than it is science. And I felt like it was really fun just kind of even witnessing that and having different people present and talk through aspects of the program. We even, I think at our midweek check-in, we were able to sort of say to them, like, hey, this is great detail on California and on Florida. Would you be willing to give us a gut check on Europe? And that's when they kind of pulled the sort of rabbit out of the hat in terms of, like, the final presentation, us understanding that, holy cow, US market is growing at 2.5x European market. It was like, that was just the nugget we needed to kind of, like, bolt down the kind of final nail into this kind of phase one focus that we've got now. So
that's so good. Thank you for sharing your story. I just know it's going to help a lot of people know exactly the benefit that you got from Strategy Sprint. Now I want to transition to some fun personal questions so we get to know you a little bit better. So since your company revolves around boating, tell us about your favorite boating destination.
That's so funny. And it's a good question, because I have to be honest. So I have 3 co-founding partners. Like I said, Marcelino, Charles, and Nick were sort of all in this together, trying to get the boat off the ground, so to speak. But Marcelino grew up in the South Florida area, basically on a boat in Miami. And so my co-founder has been boating his entire life. He knows boating, the way I know cycling or the way I know running. And so, what's been fun is to get kind of so much education, context, color about the industry from someone who's, like, lived it, for decades. Personally, I've been fortunate to go on boats with friends. I live in Idaho, which is a beautiful state, lots of water. And so we have a beautiful lake up in McCall. And so my kids and I, enjoy to be in McCall and be out on a boat. But our probably most memorable time on the water and with boating was my son was born in Bangkok, and we went back to Bangkok in the summer of 2019. He had never been back since we left when he was about a year old. And so it was really incredible to be in the south of Thailand, just off the coast of what they call Got Samui. And there's an area of the world called Ang Thang National Park. And it's just like hundreds of these glorious, lush, tiny little islands. And so the kids and I were so fortunate to get to go from, like, one island to the next, and we snorkeled in all these different locations. And then we, like, climbed up kind of a, like, hill on one of the islands. And it was just breathtaking. And so I think, any time you can get out on the water far away from really kind of, like, mainland experience, that's personally for me the most kind of like spiritually infusing, as well as just, like, really fun. And so I feel like south of Thailand's an amazing area. And then also having done a lot of work in the Caribbean over the last, 8-10 years in the cruise industry, the Caribbean is a wealth of just, like, gorgeous places. And there are so many gorgeous tiny little islands that you've never heard of, like, off the coast of the Bahamas or somewhere, kind of in the broader Caribbean. So I just feel, fortunate to have had the chance to experience those things.
I love it. Amazing. One more question. If you could go back in time, what is one word of wisdom you would give to your 25-year-old self?
It's such a great question. I think the thing that first comes to mind is I would encourage my younger self or anyone that's 25 to stop trying to figure out the rest of your life. Just try to figure out the next 2 to 3 years. Have enough kind of directional vision for kind of where you're intending to head, but don't get so caught up with thinking you've got it all figured out. Because the truth is your whole life might blow up in 5 different areas, as mine has many times. And life will surprise you. And I think, not all the surprises are warm and fuzzy, but the truth is life surprises you in a more beautiful way if you're open to that. And so I think for young people at that stage of their life and career, kind of hold loosely to the saddle, don't hold so tight to the reins of some idea or some dream that it means you miss some other possibilities just to the left or just to the right of you. And so, I encourage a lot of the young people I mentor to just try stuff, figure out what you like, figure out what you don't like, commit to something, but not forever. Just, try it for a few years and really be thoughtful about what are the kinds of skills you personally want to grow and develop independent of whatever industry you might be in. Because to give you an example, I ended up working 5 years in the auto industry with General Motors. I started at Saturn Corporation and then was working in China with Shanghai GM and helping kind of bring that project to life. Never in a billion years would I have ever imagined I would be working in the auto industry. I thought I was going to go to medical school after studying mechanical engineering. Yeah. And yet the kinds of leadership development opportunities I had as a 17 to 22-year-old were just so ridiculous that I couldn't not engage. And so I think if you are aware of how you want to kind of show up professionally and the kinds of skills you want to build and develop, the truth is I really think you can do that, in so many different industries and places. So I think people just have to be open-spirited enough to kind of looking at things maybe through a creative lens and trying to kind of contemplate it, with that inner kind of gut check of the kinds of growth experiences you personally have the chance to have.
I love that. That's so good. What a great word to tell yourself and all young people, really. So, well, thank you so much, Tara, for coming on Strategy Simplified. You've really inspired us all with your experience, and we're so grateful to have had this time to hear your story. I hope it encourages other companies to apply to be a part of Strategy Sprint. And we wish you and Photon Marine all the best.
Thank you so much, Beth, to you and to the whole team. It really just means a lot that you guys were willing to kind of bring us on board pretty quickly. And I just want to make a quick but really important shout out to Josh Koger, who he's the one that really connected us all. Yes. And he and I had the opportunity to work together when we were building Fathom. And he's just he's an extraordinary human, extremely talented. And I just hugely appreciate that he recommended and really encouraged us to reach out and apply. So thanks so much for your help.
Yes, we're super thankful for Josh for recommending you. So,
all right. Well, I'm sure we'll be talking before long. Beth, thanks again for taking the time to hear a little bit more about Photon Marine today. We appreciate it so much.
Welcome to another session of After Office Hours, the part of the show where we answer listener questions. Don't forget to send in your questions. You can send in a 30 to 60 second voice memo recorded with your phone with your name and where you're calling in from and your question. Just email that to podcast@managementconsulted.com. Today, we have an anonymous question. Answering it is Naman, our COO. The question is, are there any situations where the pyramid principle isn't the best approach? Naman?
Oh, you're getting me riled up here, Japheth. I'm a huge proponent of the pyramid principle. I lead 200 trainings a year on this for our Fortune 1000 partners, and it has absolutely transformed my professional life and the life of our team, and more importantly, the performance and effectiveness of our team. So for those of you listening who aren't familiar with the pyramid principle, let me just give you a little bit of background. It's a problem-solving and communication approach that was originally founded by Barbara Minto in the 1970s at McKinsey. And here's really what it says. It says that in your communication, you should lead with the assertion, the answer, the key takeaway. At Management Consulted, we call it the assertion. And really what the assertion is the one key message, idea, takeaway that you want your audience to believe or do by the end of your presentation, email, meeting, etc. What is the one thing that you want your audience to do or believe by the end? That's the assertion. And that's what you lead with. Underneath that, you have what we call arguments. These arguments are the chapters of your story. So if the assertion is the so what for your audience, the arguments are the why. They help prove your assertion. And then underneath the arguments sit relevant data to help back up your arguments, which in turn back up your assertion. And this approach flips the traditional communication approach on its head. Typically, when you walk into any MBA program, any company, you find that the presentations are chock full of data, they're very process-oriented, and eventually, after some meandering route, the presenter finally gets to the point. They end with the punchline. Here's the problem with that. By the time you get to the punchline, you wasted a lot of my time and you have disengaged me. The pyramid principle solves for these things by engaging your audience up front and telling them immediately what it is that you want them to do or believe, and then proving that thing out for the rest of the presentation. Instead of going through the proof points first and then eventually ending up at the key takeaway. So now, to answer your question, Anonymous, is there ever a time where I shouldn't use the pyramid principle? And my snarky, sarcastic answer to that is yes, when you are telling a joke or leading a set at a comedy club. You have my permission to end with the punchline then. But in any professional setting, I recommend using the pyramid principle. If you are writing an email, leading a meeting, giving a presentation, you should tell your audience immediately what it is that you want them to do or believe. Here's why. The goal in business communication is not to prove a point with extensive support. The goal is to gain buy-in and motivate action. How do you do that? You frame the interaction, the conversation, the presentation, the meeting with an assertion. Let me give you an example. Hey everybody, by the end of this meeting, I want us to have decided whether to invest $2 million in paid media to reach 10 million engaged readers. Then you can walk through why that's your recommendation, why that's the best solution for the business, and what next steps will be. That sounds like a heck of a lot more efficient meeting than most of the ones that I've been in my life, and it gives everyone a common direction you're going in. It doesn't mean that you don't welcome dissent or differing ideas. It just means that you have a recommendation you're bringing to the table. You've done the work to prove why that's the best recommendation, and you're inviting feedback and pushback early. Why does that matter? It matters because you can figure out early on in the meeting what your audience cares about. If they have pushback over a certain part of your plan, you get to it in the first 5 minutes of the meeting instead of the last 5 minutes of the meeting. That gives you valuable feedback and allows you to reallocate meeting focus. I'll give you this though, anonymous question asker. If you're walking into a meeting you know is going to be contentious, if you're walking into a meeting where you have to build trust, I would still utilize the pyramid principle. I would still lead with an assertion. I may just make my assertion a little bit softer, or I may start out with context or information that gets heads nodding in the room, that starts to build that trust, build that consensus before you move on to parts of the conversation that may end up being more contentious. That's still a pyramid principle friendly approach, but a little bit softer. So if you find yourself preparing for a difficult meeting, you can take that approach to build some trust, build some consensus before moving on to other parts of your agenda. But overall, in a business setting, there is no presentation, meeting, email, no communication that I recommend that you write or conduct outside of the pyramid principle.
Well, there you have it, folks. Thanks, Naman, for the great detail there. Quick follow-up question. Where can people go to learn more about the pyramid principle if they're interested in it?
Well, I may be biased, but I think that we've done a great job of breaking the pyramid principle down in an article and a video that you can find through the link in the show notes.
Awesome. Well, thanks for answering another question, Naman. And listeners, thanks for tuning in for After Office Hours. We're excited for next week's session. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you'll consider joining the next strategy sprint coming up in May 2022. You can learn more and apply at the links in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love to have you leave a review. Go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you're listening, and just give us a rating and tell us a little bit about what you're enjoying about the show. It makes our day every time we see a new review come in. All right, well, that's it for this week. We'll catch you next time.